Welcome to the deep dive. So, you've given us some really interesting material on influencer culture, articles, your own observations, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And today, our mission really is to cut through all the noise and pull out what's actually crucial for you to understand.
Yeah, get to the core of it.
Exactly. We're looking at this whole phenomenon that's, well, it's undeniably shaping how we see the world, isn't it? From, viral fame to brand deals, and
Absolutely.
really digging into like what's real and what might just be a very carefully built image.
Definitely. It's something most of us bump into every day online. And I think you've touched on the key questions with the sources you shared.
Hmm.
Like, is being an influencer really the dream job it looks like? What are the hidden costs, the pressures,
Right.
and ultimately how much can we actually trust these online personas and, the products they push?
Exactly. So for you listening, this deep dive, we're going to trace how influencer culture grew up, basically,
Yeah, it's evolution.
and look at the impact of sudden fame and get into that real tension between genuine connection and, well, perfectly curated aesthetics.
That authenticity versus aesthetic balance. Yeah.
We'll also look at the money side, the economics driving it all, and maybe even touch on what might be coming next.
It's a pretty complex web for sure. And as we unpack it, you'll see how what started as simple online sharing.
Hmm.
Well, it's become this huge, sophisticated industry.
Yeah.
And it has big implications for how we talk, how we buy things, even how we see reality itself.
Okay, so let's just dive in then. When you're scrolling your feeds now, it feels like influencers have just always been there.
Yeah.
But where did it actually start?
That's a good point. It can seem like it just exploded overnight, right?
Hmm.
But the roots, they actually go back to the early 2000s. Remember blogs?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So individuals started sharing their passions, their expertise online. They built little communities around, specific interests.
Like the early beauty bloggers or tech reviewers.
Exactly. People just sharing honest opinions. For you, listening back then, these are kind of the pioneers, building trust in a really organic way.
Yeah, that feels so different from the like super polished stuff we see now. It was more connection, shared interests. It's
Right.
less about the massive brand deals, wasn't it? And then the platforms themselves changed things.
Precisely. When visually driven platforms like Instagram came along, and then boom, TikTok with the short videos,
Hmm.
that just poured fuel on the fire
Yeah.
for you and everyone online. It got way easier for people to build a personal brand and reach like a global audience.
The barriers just dropped.
Totally. And the potential for getting seen really fast just went through the roof.
And okay, so as more people got an audience, the chance to make money from that influence, that obviously popped up. How does that basic business model work now?
So at its core, the model really relies on, well, trust and attention. Simple as that, almost.
Right.
Influencers build a following with their content, their perceived, authority or just being relatable in a certain niche.
Right.
Then brands, they tap into that. They connect with these influencers to reach their audiences, the ones who are already engaged.
And they pay them for.
Various things. Sponsored, posts the ads you see right in your feed, product reviews, sometimes affiliate links.
Ah, the ones with the codes.
Yeah, where they get a cut if you buy something using their link or code. And also selling their own stuff, their own merchandise. That's become huge too for many influencers you might follow.
Which, makes you think of someone like Kylie Jenner. Her story always comes up.
Mhm.
That narrative of influencer power turning into this massive business, even reaching that billionaire status people talked about so much. What's important about her story for us to get?
Well, what's really striking about Kylie Jenner is how effectively she used her personal brand, which she built up through reality TV and her massive social media presence.
Yeah, it was already huge.
Exactly. She used that to launch and push her cosmetics company. For you watching this, her millions of followers were basically an instant customer base,
Hmm.
just waiting. It really blurred the lines between like personal life, celebrity status, and being an entrepreneur. Super impactful.
And it really showed the power of having that direct line to an audience, didn't it?
Totally.
It wasn't just like a normal ad you might ignore. It felt like a personal tip from someone whose life, people were already obsessively following.
Exactly. That feeling of connection, that implied trust,
Yeah.
it can be incredibly valuable for brands trying to reach you and others like you. But yeah, it raises big questions about transparency, doesn't it? Like, are these endorsements really genuine preference, or is it mostly about the paycheck?
Right. Okay, so we've traced this kind of fascinating rise from early blogs to this huge industry now.
Hmm.
But with that kind of fame, that reach, there've got to be downsides, right? Challenges for the people actually in the spotlight. Let's get into the less shiny parts.
Yeah, it's really crucial for you to understand that constantly chasing viral fame, keeping up that big online presence,
Mm.
it takes a ton of energy. It can really wear you down. It might look like the dream job from outside, but
Mm.
the psychology behind why stuff goes viral,
Mm.
it taps into this deep human need for connection, for validation.
Sure.
And while that feels good at first, it can get pretty addictive. For influencers, those metrics, likes, comments, shares, they can start to feel like a nonstop grade on their self-worth,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Wow, yeah. It sounds like you're living in a constant performance, always on, curating every little thing for an audience. That pressure must be intense.
It really is.
Mhm.
The relentless need to create engaging content just to keep people interested, to
Yeah.
stay on top of trends that change like that, and managing all the feedback, good and bad.
Yeah.
It leads to serious burnout and mental health issues for a lot of influencers you follow.
And the lines blur.
Totally. The line between their public self and their private life just gets fuzzier and fuzzier. It makes it really hard to just switch off,
Yeah.
find real downtime.
And then there's the whole public nature of messing up, mistakes, controversies in the age of cancel culture.
Right.
We've seen so many examples of influencers whose careers just hit a wall because of like one misstep or some old problematic content resurfacing, amplified by the very platforms that made them famous.
And what's really striking for you watching this unfold is just how incredibly fast and intense public opinion can turn online.
Mm.
A single bad post, or maybe an old comment someone digs up,
Mm.
it can trigger this immediate, often really severe backlash.
Yeah.
And that can mean losing followers like crazy, brands pulling out of deals. It hits their livelihood directly. It really shows how fragile a career built on public perception can be.
It really sounds like walking a tightrope. One wrong move and bam.
Pretty much.
And speaking of perception, let's really dig into this idea of authenticity versus aesthetic. This feels like a core tension, something you probably notice all the time when you're just scrolling.
Absolutely. The platforms themselves often kind of encourage a certain look, don't they?
Mm.
Aesthetically pleasing, perfectly composed shots,
Mm.
often showing this really aspirational lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's led to the huge use of editing tools like Facetune, filters everywhere, and even just carefully staging moments that look spontaneous, but are actually, planned out meticulously.
So what you're often seeing is just a super polished, curated slice of reality.
Exactly.
Like everyone's just showing their highlight reel, cutting out the boring bits, the messy bits, the everyday stuff.
Mm.
And as someone looking at it, it can be so hard to tell what's actually genuine and what's been heavily filtered or maybe even totally staged.
And that's precisely the tension for you as the viewer, as the consumer. While, yeah, there's definitely an appeal to that glossy, aspirational content.
Sure, it can be fun to look at.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's also this growing hunger among audiences for something more real, more relatable. People are increasingly looking for influencers who maybe show a more unfiltered, honest side of their lives. Perhaps that reflects some of your own values, too.
So why does that perceived authenticity hit so hard with audiences like you? What's the real pull there?
I think fundamentally it comes down to trust
Mm-hmm.
and relatability.
Okay.
In this digital world just flooded with seemingly perfect online people, right?
Yeah.
An influencer who shows some vulnerability, talks openly about struggles, or just seems more down to earth.
Yeah.
They can really cut through all that noise,
Yeah.
and they build a much stronger bond with their audience.
Mm-hmm.
It creates this sense of community, mutual understanding
Mm-hmm.
that you might find really appealing.
That makes total sense. It's almost a backlash against the constant perfection push online.
Could be, yeah.
You mentioned contrasting approaches with Emma Chamberlain and the D'Amelio sisters. Can you expand on how their public images differ?
Yeah, they were a really interesting contrast, actually. And Emma Chamberlain, she got popular with these more raw, unfiltered, kind of self-deprecating vlogs, remember?
Yeah, very DIY feel.
Right. Her editing style is deliberately less polished.
Mhm.
She often shares just candid, everyday stuff.
Yeah.
The D'Amelio sisters, on the other hand, they blew up on TikTok initially with these really slick dance videos and a much more traditionally polished look. While, yeah, they've shown more personal stuff over time, their initial explosion was very much tied to that carefully crafted online image.
And as someone watching both, you can see how those different styles pull in different crowds, create different vibes.
Yeah.
One feels maybe more like a friend sharing their messy day. The other feels more like watching, I don't know, a pop star performance.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And both ways can work, obviously. They're both successful. but they tap into different audience desires. One leans into relatability and that sense of genuine connection you might value, while the other is more about entertainment aspiration.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Let's talk money. We all kind of know the top influencers can make serious cash.
The headlines love those stories.
Right. But what are the actual financial realities for most people trying to make a living doing this?
That's a really important thing for you to consider, actually. Because, yeah, the headlines focus on the multi-million-dollar deals.
Yeah.
But the financial reality of influencing is incredibly varied. There's what they call a very long tail. A tiny percentage at the top earn most of the money,
Right.
while loads of others really struggle to make decent money from their content. Income levels swing wildly depending on audience size, how engaged that audience is, their specific niche,
Okay.
and obviously the kind of brand deals they can actually land.
So the idea that it's some guaranteed path to getting rich is probably not true for most people trying it.
Far from it, for the vast majority.
What are some of the common ways influencers make money then, besides those big, obvious brand sponsorships you see plastered everywhere?
Okay, so beyond the direct sponsorships and paid ads, a really common one is affiliate marketing.
We mentioned that briefly.
Right. They share unique links to products, maybe stuff they recommend, and if you or other followers use those links to buy something, they get a commission, a small cut. Selling their own merchandise is also big. Clothing lines, digital products like presets or guides. That could be a major income source if they have a really loyal fan base.
Right. People want a piece of the brand.
Exactly. And then many platforms have their own ways to pay creators, like ad revenue sharing on YouTube or creator funds on TikTok. Though the payouts from those can really vary a lot.
In this whole world of sponsorships, it brings up ethical questions that you might ponder as a consumer, right?
Definitely.
Like, how do we really know if an influencer genuinely likes a product or if they're just, getting paid to say they do?
This is such a critical area, and transparency is absolutely key for you to make informed choices.
So disclosure is important.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Influencers should always clearly state when they're being paid to promote something, hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, that kind of thing. And regulators in many places are cracking down, trying to enforce that transparency more.
Right.
But the line can still feel blurry sometimes.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it kind of falls on you, the audience, to be a critical viewer, to think about the content you're consuming.
Because conflicts of interest can definitely happen.
For sure. If influencers push products they don't actually use or believe in, well, they risk misleading the very audience that trusts them.
Which brings us to a kind of murky area of the rise of fake influencers. That sounds like a real threat to the credibility of the whole system.
It is. It's a significant problem. Because in an industry where how influential you seem and how big your audience looks is directly tied to how much you can earn.
Right. The temptation is there.
Exactly. There's a huge temptation for some people to just fake it, to artificially inflate their numbers.
How do they do that?
Oh, various tactics. Buying followers is a big one. Using bots to automatically like and comment, making engagement look really high.
Wow.
Even creating fake accounts just to leave positive comments on their own stuff. It's becoming more and more common.
So someone could look like they have this massive, super engaged following that would attract brands, but it could all be smoke and mirrors.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just rip off the brands who are paying for reach that isn't actually real people like you. It also damages the trust in the entire influencer marketing world. It makes it harder for genuine creators, the ones with real engaged audiences, to stand out.
Yeah, muddying the waters.
Totally. Platforms are always fighting it, trying to find and delete these fake accounts, but it's like a constant game of cat and mouse.
It sounds kind of like the Wild West in some parts of the internet still.
In some ways, yeah.
Looking ahead then, what do you see coming down the pipe for influencer culture? There's some pretty big tech changes happening, like AI.
Yeah, the potential impact of artificial intelligence is definitely a huge factor for you to think about. We're already starting to see AI-generated influencers pop up.
Virtual personalities.
Exactly. Virtual personalities that can be perfectly controlled. They don't age, they don't burn out, they don't cause scandals, usually. And deep fake technology.
Yeah.
That could potentially be used to create endorsements that look totally real from people who never actually agreed to them.
Whoa. That raises some seriously weird questions about what online influence even is, doesn't it?
It really does.
The idea of computer programs shaping what humans buy and think.
It definitely brings up big ethical, even philosophical questions about authenticity, trust, the nature of online relationships
Mm.
for you and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, you can see why brands might like the idea of perfectly controllable virtual influencers.
There's less risk.
But on the other side, audiences like you might start to value genuine human connection even more, the thing that human influencers theoretically offer.
And what about the market itself? Like, is there a point where it just gets too crowded? Peak influencer?
Yeah, saturation?
Can this level of content creation, this level of consumption in your feeds just go on forever?
That's a really valid question. As the sheer amount of influencer content keeps exploding on every platform you use.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
Right. It gets harder and harder for any single creator to grab and hold on to audience attention. And platform algorithms are constantly changing.
Ah, the algorithm.
Yeah, which can massively impact whose stuff you actually see and how often. That plays a huge role too. We might see the market fragment more, maybe audiences get more niche, and perhaps people become more picky about who and what they follow.
So is this maybe the beginning of the end for influencer culture as we know it? Or is it more likely to just adapt, evolve with these changes you might be noticing?
I lean towards evolution. Adaptation seems more likely.
Okay.
While the way it looks now might face big challenges and changes, the basic human drivers aren't going away, are they?
Like what?
Like connection, looking for inspiration, valuing recommendations from people we feel we trust. That's probably here to stay.
So maybe it just changes shape.
Yeah, influencer culture might get more specialized. Maybe put more emphasis on real engagement, not just vanity metrics like follower counts. And perhaps, hopefully, a stronger focus on accountability and transparency, which would benefit you as a consumer.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive for you, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Trying to understand influencer culture.
Definitely tried to hit the key areas.
We looked at its journey from those early online communities to the massive, multi-billion-dollar industry it is now.
Yeah.
We've examined the potential highs, the viral fame, but also the less seen stuff, the burnout, the public scrutiny.
The dark side.
We've grappled with that really complex relationship between those perfect online images and the desire for something real, for authenticity.
That core tension.
And we looked at the money side, which is often pretty murky, including that worrying trend of fake influencers. And finally, we just touched on some potential future shifts like AI and just changes in the online world.
Absolutely. It's just such a multifaceted thing, isn't it? It touches on psychology, business, tech, and our whole relationship with online identity and information that you and everyone online are dealing with constantly.
Yeah.
That constant push and pull between fame, money, and authenticity that's going to keep shaping this world.
And so, with all that in mind, we want to leave you with maybe one final thought to chew on. Building on everything we've talked about today, what parts of influencer culture do you personally find the most compelling? Or maybe the most concerning?
Yeah, what stands out to you?
And how might, how you consume online content yourself, how might that change thinking about all this? Definitely something worth considering as you navigate your own online world.
For sure.
Thanks for diving deep with us.